What does it take to be a really good therapist? A really good conversational hypnotherapist? And for me, there are a couple of things. The first one is you've got to be curious. You have to be curious. You have to want to ask questions. You're not prepared to accept the surface level answer from your client. Because if the client says, for example, they go stop smoking client, and the client goes, okay, well, I'm smoking because I enjoy it. If you go, right, okay, so you're smoking because you enjoy it, and that's the end of it, you haven't discovered if there's anything behind that. You know, why did they enjoy it? What made them enjoy it in the first place? What made them pick up a cigarette in the first place? Why are they still smoking? We need to be curious. We need to constantly ask questions until we find the real issue behind the symptom of smoking. The second one for me that is really, really important is listening. Actually listening to your client. And when I say listening, I mean the client answers your question, you don't immediately jump in with another question, and you sit and reflect for a moment, and then based on what the client has just told you, you then ask another question. But you have to listen to the whole phrase. I mean, how many times have you been in a conversation in a coffee shop or wherever, and you said something, and the instant you finish, the person you're talking to fires something back straight at you? Ask yourself, have they really had time to listen to what you said and kind of consider your thoughts before replying? Or have they just listened to the first short section of your comment and then already formulated a response, and they're just waiting for you to finish, and then blam, they hit you? That's not listening. That isn't listening. Listening is considering what the other person has said, considering what your client has said, and then responding to the whole of what your client has said. Another important trait for me for a good therapist is learning when to be silent. Now, this is different to listening. I'm talking about when to be silent. So your client has gone into an unconscious moment, and they're away doing whatever it is they're doing in their mind, and rather than asking, oh, what's going on now, what are you feeling right now, and kind of potentially interrupting that unconscious moment, you simply sit quietly and let the client go through that unconscious moment for maybe 10, 15, 30 seconds, maybe a couple of minutes. But you have to be watching the client carefully. You have to be observing the client to see what's going on, and then if you deem it's appropriate, you can then ask them what's going on. A great place to do that is if they've gone very quiet and maybe their eyes are closed, and you can see they're kind of just sitting there very relaxed, and suddenly there's a smile, or suddenly the shoulders raise up, or there's a facial expression that comes out of nowhere. That's a great place to ask, what just happened there? Because we're curious again, what just happened there? Now, with a bit of luck, the client may have just found the reason why they're doing X, Y, or Z, or they found a road that leads to the reason, and then you can explore that, or just stay silent and let the client do all of the work they need to do in that unconscious moment, and actually in that trance. Let the trance do its work, let the client do the work, and do your best not to interrupt them unless you absolutely have to, or unless you spot something that you're curious about and you want an answer to. So for me, those are the three main things: be curious, listening, and the use of silence. If you're able to develop those, you're going to be a really, really good therapist. There's one little extra bonus that I think is quite equally important, is you have to be confident. Now, this isn't during the therapy phase, but when you're doing a strategy call, when you're putting your content out there, if your content is, well, I think this might be true, or maybe that's true, or I think that they're right, or if you put a lot of doubt, a lot of kind of self-doubt into your content, people will pick that up. If you're doing a strategy call and people think, well, you know, you say to someone, well, I think I might be able to help you, perhaps it could be this, or maybe. If you're not exuding confidence, how can a potential client have confidence enough to want to work with you? It is so important that during the initial stages, you are a confident person. You come across as being confident. Now, that doesn't mean being loud and being brash and being mouthy. It just means being confident. It means being in a place where you can sit and have the knowledge of your own skill, your own ability to help a client, that you know what you're talking about, that you are the expert in your niche. That's what I mean about being confident.